Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for those across the pond. Welcome to Planet DDS's webinar on how to increase dental practice profitability. My name is Xavier, and I'm here with Sara. We'll do introductions shortly, but before we kick it off, just for those who are not familiar with Planet DDS, Denticon is our cloud-based solution that we offer. Here's just a few tidbits. The industry-leading enterprise dental software in the cloud, and just recently, Inc. 5000's America's fastest-growing private companies, and also Inc. Magazine's best workplaces. So very proud about that. And let's jump right into it. We do have a lot to cover today, so I would try to get through this as quick as possible so we can answer questions at the end. So if you guys do have questions, feel free to please put them into the questions chat box, and we will answer them hopefully the last 10 to 15 minutes of the session. This is a CE accredited webinar. So here's the information on the screen. We will go over this at the end of the presentation as well, but here's a verification code. An email will be sent to you from CE Zoom. So click the link and follow the instructions. And now we'll start the CE portion of the webinar. So I mentioned before, my name is Xavier Gardner. I'm the Senior Account Manager at Planet DDS, and I'm here with Sara Ettinger. She is the Account Manager at PDS, or Planet DDS. Our experience, we have about maybe 10, 11 years, over 10 years combined of operational experience in a top 10 DSO. I personally managed 3 separate locations. One was a de novo, one was 18-year-old practice, and another was 20-year-old, more of a geriatric practice. And we strongly feel that it takes a village when you're trying to increase dental practice profitability. Hopefully you guys can take some nuggets. Again, these are best practices, and from our standpoint, it worked for us. It may not work for every single person on the call, but hopefully you can take some tidbits and maybe a blueprint on how to get started, because that's the most difficult thing for most. If you guys aren't putting together goals, if you're not doing morning huddles and so on and so forth. So hopefully as we go through these slides, some of this will resonate with some of you guys, and maybe some of it will be new. But at the end of the day, I think hopefully you guys should feel a little bit more I don't know why I can't say the word, inclined, yeah, equipped. Sara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Xavier. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Xavier mentioned, we did used to work together at a DSO where I opened a de novo practice that started from the ground up. We had 1 dentist and 3 employees, and then I helped to grow that practice to have 10 clinicians, 18 employees total, and we were at $3.5 million per year in revenue within 4 years. At one point, we were trending 28 to 30% profit margins, and we were in the top 10% of performing new offices for our DSO. So I definitely learned some things along the way, some that worked well, some not so well. But again, hopefully what we provide for you today will give you some good takeaways that you can implement into your own practices.
Perfect. Okay, so the agenda for today, setting goals for your providers, morning huddle tips and tricks, important daily metrics, incentivizing your team, and balancing production and patient care. So we'll start with implementing and identifying appropriate goals for each provider. If you guys are not implementing goals, or you don't have a budget, or your office is unaware of what numbers or metrics that are important to the practice, kind of getting started is the best thing for that is really to start with your general dentistry. If you can learn anything from this slide, it's basically assign goals that are 4 times the amount of your wages or their wages that they get. So, for instance, if you have a new grad, what we did is we had kind of a draw to say, or a guarantee, if you will, that the first 3 months that they were onboarded with our practice, we would pay them X amount of dollars a day, no matter how much they produce. In California, usually that number was about $500 a day. Again, different states, different cities will have different numbers there. But ideally, where we get the 4 times the amount is you have to factor in that that provider will probably need 2 assistants at all times. So you're going to have to pay those hourly wages as well. And then also think about lab expenses. Materials cost a little bit more for GP than general hygiene. And really factoring in the experience is very important. So how we do that to kind of have a standardized playing field for all clinicians is if you're at $350 per patient, no matter how many patients you feel comfortable seeing in a day, then it's really, that's your goal. And as long as you hit that goal, then you should be fine. You'll have a productive month for sure if you can do that. And Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and it's also important to keep in mind additional overheads such as front office expenses, administrative costs, lab costs, and just the general cost of running your business day to day, as simple as, you know, rent and like keeping the lights on. And also just when you're establishing these goals, I would encourage you to make it a collaborative dialogue with each clinician, understand what their own individual goals and motivations are. Most likely if they're a new grad, probably paying off their student loans is a big one. Keeping in mind their strengths and opportunities with regards to timing for each various appointment type. So in our experience, 6 to 8 patients per day was a good starting place for a new grad who's just starting out, getting familiar with patient flow and just the general flow of the day. This seemed to be a good number to help them establish a patient base to produce some dentistry eventually, but also not overwhelm them. And especially if they are new grads, fresh out of school, some early wins in the confidence department are really critical.
And you say new grad, you have to realize too that there's probably a high percentage of new grads that have actually never had a job before in their life. So you have to be mindful of that. And, you know, setting them up for success is very important. So out the gate, withdrawals guarantees for the first 3 to 6 months, and be flexible with that. Make sure they're comfortable because you don't want to run into a position of turnover. That kills practices. It kills momentum. Sometimes if you have a doctor who's finally getting their feet wet and they're hitting the ground and they're getting it, they understand how to get case acceptance, present you know, treatment plans to their patients. The last thing in the world that you want is them to turn around and leave, you know, 3 months after that, because then you got to start all over again. So really setting them up for success, understanding they probably never worked before in the worlds. Also understand that they're not really in school, they're not really diagnosing much treatment and worrying about case acceptance because there's really not a lot of finances involved in that. Most of these dental schools really, you know, they're seeing these patients pro bono. So sure, it's great. They can present a case that has, you know, 7 crowns to someone. It's not like the person's going to say no if it's free. So really a lot goes into training and coaching. And again, 4 times the amount is a really good starting spot. But don't be afraid to incentivize them more if if they're a new grad and they're rocking and rolling and they're starting out doing, you know, $2,500 a day and they're seeing a lot of patients and they feel comfortable seeing a lot of patients. That's fantastic. That's great. Make sure you adjust their goals. You never want to assign goals that are lower than what a clinician is capable of doing.
And they probably wouldn't want that either. So.
Yeah, they don't want that either. They want to make the most money as possible because, again, like Sarah said, they're trying to pay off their student loans first and foremost. And we know how expensive those get. So going to hygiene, similar, but it's 3 times their wages on this, and then down to $150 per hour. And that's really simple, right? Because they don't really have assistants that you have to pay that work with the hygienist. Their supplies are a lot less expensive, and they don't cost as much. So if you can get your hygiene costs to 30 to 33% of what they're producing, then that's a very, very healthy revenue stream. So and then hygiene is so important because you got to figure they see the hygienist probably twice as much as they see the general dentist, and they come back for the hygienist. They have good conversations with them. They're almost like a therapist in a chair in a way. so it's really important to have a very healthy hygiene program, and if you want to be profitable, 30 to 33% of what they bring in. If you can hold your cost to that, then you'll be in a really good spot. And Sarah, do you want to talk about schedule templates for them?
Yeah, I think schedule templates are really important because often this is an opportunity that is missed. So as Xavier said, hygiene has the potential to be a pretty profitable line of business for you. There's likely no assistant involved, the cost of materials are minimal, and there are several adjunctive services that can help boost the per patient revenue pretty easily. So it's recommended to maintain a schedule template that specifically allots time slots for SRPs, as opposed to just not planning it all and letting your hygiene schedule fill up with pro fees and perio maintenances. SRPs are a low-cost procedure that can often bring in, like 3 to 4 times as much revenue as a pro fee or perio maintenance. So being mindful of scheduled templates is key. And just as an added note, establishing a goal for all of your clinicians, whether they're a general dentist or a hygienist, it's also important because it gives them a level of accountability. If they're paid hourly or on a daily draw, they're getting paid the second they walk in the door, regardless of the amount of dentistry that they are completing in that day. So having a goal that's watched and discussed as a team really helps provide accountability for their contribution as the piece of the overall team goals and objectives.
Very well said. Okay, we'll go to morning huddle tips and tricks. So people hear morning huddles all the time in our industry. A lot of times they talk about financial gain in morning huddles, but I'm actually, obviously that's great, and we do want to talk about metrics and things that we need to work on and how we're going to attain our goals. That's definitely something that we talk about. But the main reason really of a morning huddle is for communication. As we know, throughout the day, it is basically putting out fire after fire in a dental office on a daily basis, something I do not miss very much, to be honest. I don't know how Sara feels about that, but I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. But we understand that it really is, it's difficult when there's so many moving pieces and so many moving parts in a day. And a lot of it really is out of your control, right? Patients could come in 15 minutes late or 20 minutes early and really throw a wrench in your schedule. So it's really, really beneficial to talk about your schedule and make sure you point out or identify any areas where it might be a little too busy or a little too chaotic. And don't be afraid to contact patients and move them around if you know it's going to be busy and if you know they're going to wait. They really appreciate that. If you could save them 20 minutes and they can run an errand down the street
instead of sitting in the lobby.
In the lobby, it's huge, and they really do appreciate it. It takes a lot of focus and a lot of effort from your front desk and even your back office in order to make sure that they're calling these patients and pointing this stuff out on the morning huddle saying, hey, our 2 o'clock might be a little difficult. Should we call Sara and move her down to 2:30 so we give Dr. Xavier more time to get in and out of these 2 to 3 exams that he's doing at 2 o'clock. So I put 10 minutes at least. I sometimes did 15, sometimes I did 20-minute morning huddles, honestly. And coming from, Sara and I, we probably done each nearly 1,000 morning huddles. So again, it doesn't have to be the same exact thing every single day, but you should at least make sure that you are focusing on the communication specifically between the front and the back office to make sure lab cases are in. If they're not in, you need to call the patients before they show up. And then Sara has some good points about designating a champion for specific metrics.
Yeah, so Xavier and I both used to do this. So designate a different champion for any specific metric that you are tracking as a team, just to encourage more team involvement. They probably don't want to hear the same voice every single morning. So getting other people involved in the huddle makes it more fun and energetic and sets a really good tone for the day. And this, making a champion can have multiple positive effects. So first and foremost, again, you're one person. They probably don't want to hear your voice every day, but also you as an individual cannot do it all. And delegation is the only way you're going to be able to achieve and sustain any type of success. Second, it's going to energize your team members to feel a sense of ownership and empowerment by delegating this metric and challenging to move the needle on whatever measurement you're putting them in charge of. So highly recommend it for sure.
So I talked a little bit about this already. I like to have a schedule handy to ensure providers have enough time to maximize their opportunity. So this kind of segues a little bit into the financial gain portion as well. If you have a schedule, you have to make sure that schedule is productive. A schedule is not just making sure you can get through the day and people don't yell at you for waiting in your waiting room. You have to make sure that a doctor will look at that schedule and say, all right, I've got several opportunities today. I might only have, $500 confirmed that's scheduled, and my goal is $2,000. But if I have 5 to 6 opportunities, to me, as an operator, I'm thinking there's no reason why you can't hit your goal, as long as we are letting the patients know, how long they may be here for their visit, which is very important, and also moving patients around, which we talked about earlier, to maximize the opportunities that you actually do have. Sara, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, again, this just kind of goes back to the hygiene schedule templates and just the importance of smart scheduling and really setting your clinicians up for success. And especially you want to make sure that they have productive schedules, because that is a complaint we heard quite often. So if it's a collaborative conversation, they're signing off on the schedule. Didn't you have your clinicians sign off on them?
Yeah, so something that I like to do, and it was a little bit bold when I first started doing it, but it ended up working out pretty well. So what I would do is I would print out the schedule for today, tomorrow, and the next day, and I would hang it up in the lab, and I would make the doctors go and actually check off and confirm that this schedule is not too busy. So that way, when it comes to that day, if all the patients are flying in there, they weren't able to say, hey, why is my schedule so freaking busy? Because I said, hey, you signed off on it, so I'm not going to make any changes. But it was a good time for them to look, not just for today, but the next 2 days as well, to say, hey, Xavier, that 10 a.m. time is nuts. What are you thinking? Like, there's no way I can see 4 exams at that time. And it was nice because we built a relationship off of that, because they knew that I had their best interest and I was trying to maximize their opportunities. And I didn't mind calling the 2 exams at 10 o'clock and saying, hey, you know what, the doctor's running a little bit late from his 8 a.m. Or a patient came in late this morning. So is there any way you can come in at 10:20 or 10:30 instead? And again, they're so excited. They're like, yeah, I can do this now, or perfect, thanks for letting me know. As long as you give them enough heads up. And again, if they can't do it, then that's fine, right? You can schedule them the next day or next week. Make sure you reappoint those people. But it's really going to ensure that you have no complaints from your patient base.
No complaints.
Well, sorry.
Complaints is impossible.
That is actually true. I get ahead of myself sometimes. Sarah has to calm me down. I get very passionate about this. So the last thing I want to say on this is get your creative juices flowing. So morning huddles should not be the same every single day. It's funny, I actually remember a morning huddle from 4 years ago, which is crazy because I barely remember what I ate for breakfast on Monday. but I remember a huddle from 4 years ago, and our owner doctor, it was the first day of October, and we had a really tough summer. We were kind of dragging our feet, and you could tell that the team morale was really low. We hadn't hit our goal in the last 3 months, and I'll talk about goals and incentives for the team a little bit later, but it really wears on you, especially in the industry that you guys are in. It's complicated and it's difficult when you have so many patients that are coming in, and your goal is to treat those patients and get them in and out. And if you don't see a reward, or if you don't get incentives after you have good months, it really starts to take its toll, and that's where you get more complaints. You get people thinking about leaving. Why am I working so hard and not seeing as much reward? So our owner doctor came in wearing a boxing robe, and she blasted Eye of the Tiger in our morning huddle, and she started like punching the air and stuff like she was Rocky Balboa. She's like, all right, it's Rocktober. We're gonna rock this month. And it was great because it made everyone laugh. Everyone, it was a Monday morning, and we had a 7 a.m. Monday morning, mind you. So it was probably a bad decision on my part to do that. But anyways, so we actually did a game, which I thought was really cool. And we actually didn't even talk about metrics. We didn't even talk about communication. I think it was just a good time to reset and to have some fun, and to, give a jolt to people's energy. And so what she did was she made us all sit down, and there were 8 people on our team. And she gave us all a thing of floss. And she said, I'll give a Starbucks gift card to whoever can rip out all the floss first. And that is something I'll probably never forget. I was awful at it. I think I came in last place. But
wow, you're so competitive.
Yeah, I do remember that. I came in last. And again, it was fun. We actually had a very good month. We kind of, hit the reset button, and I don't, encourage all of your owner doctors to be Rocky Balboa, but, that's just something that's different, and it kind of stuck with me. And feel free to be creative in those morning huddle situations.
So in the spirit of profitability, did you guys reuse the floss?
We did not.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we would probably buy some regulations.
Yeah, probably, likely.
Yeah. Okay, so we're actually right on time. So we've got about 20 more minutes or so, and there's a couple more slides. Here are the most important metrics to view. So now we're fully kind of transitioning into financial mode here in profitability mode. So we have a morning huddle dashboard called Danalytics Basic, which I'll actually show some of these metrics here in a second. For those of you who do not have Danacon, I'm sure you have something similar, a place where you can look at important metrics. And these are kind of standard ones. I would assume most softwares have it. But the first two are fairly simple. The production versus your goal. You gotta look at that every single day. And it's not just the office manager or the providers to look at this. It's the entire team. Collections, that's a percentage of goal. Same thing. You're only as good as what you collect. Average daily production by provider. Again, we spoke about this in implementing goals for your providers. Once the goal is implemented, this is a really nice metric because they can see how attainable it is on a daily basis, and they can see where they're at after every workday. And then, Sarah, do you have any one specific that you want to highlight on here?
Well, I think one of my favorites on here is the, actually, I think it is probably my very favorite, and I feel like it's probably your favorite as well.
Why do you say that?
Because it pertains to your favorite catchphrase, which is?
The low-hanging fruit.
Yes, the low-hanging fruit. So the low-hanging fruit is the pending treatment dollars of today's scheduled continuing care exam. So on our dashboard, this list gives you a list as to which recall patients are walking into your doors for the day who have any outstanding treatment to complete. So you can see what their insurance is, any medical alerts you need to be aware of or that might prevent you from starting same-day treatment, and how many procedures they have outstanding. And keep in mind, these are patients who have chosen actually willingly to return to your practice. They genuinely like you and your team. You've been able to establish a relationship and a foundation of trust with them. So because of this, there's a greater likelihood that they will either start treatment that day or at least certainly schedule for treatment. So that's, I guess, the low-hanging fruit. I also really like on our dashboard, we have the outstanding AR of today's patient exams, which is right here. So this is a list that's a great reminder for your teams to collect on these balances, or at the very least, it can remind them to investigate why these balances might exist and maybe have a conversation with that patient who's coming in today. As Xavier said, I mean, you can do all the dentistry in the world, but if you don't collect on it, it's meaningless and will definitely not lead to a profitable practice. So here's a little glimpse of that list. And then another metric that I really like reviewing is where you are month to date for new patient and continuing care exams. So you can see up here, we have the month to date counts, and then we also have projections as to where you will end for the month. So this is really, again, important for sustained growth, is just to make sure that you are tracking and your new patient and continuing care exam counts, and also striving to meet or exceed month over month and year over year numbers to make sure you sustain your growth.
Perfect. And so just a quick thing on Dental Looks Basic. It's about 35 to 40 metrics for a morning huddle. And again, the ones that I showed and we talked about earlier, those should be discussed at least on a daily basis. But we don't want to have a morning huddle ever really be the same. So we have extra metrics on here that if you want to look at something from yesterday, if you guys had a really great day yesterday, you can call out providers or call out the team and saying, hey, Sarah, you did great yesterday. You produced X amount of dollars. Your schedule at the beginning of the day was a little thin, but you converted a lot of opportunities and you have a lot of same-day production. Or on the other end of the spectrum, if you saw 20 patients and half of them left without scheduling an appointment, then that's a learning opportunity. What's the reasoning behind why patients can't schedule appointments? There's no way that 50% of patients will tell you, no, I'm good. I don't need another appointment. And even if they do say that, it's a coaching tool for your front desk to overcome those objections and say, well, let's just, let's schedule this appointment. We'll put it tentatively. We'll call you. We'll send you your reminders. If you do need to change it, we can change it for you. But let's just get you on the books. If you want to go a little bit more in depth We have kind of the 3-day schedule here that's listed for today, the next working day, and the second working day. So if you want to get really technical, and again, I actually did do 2 webinars on this specific topic last year, so you can find those on our website actually, and feel free to take a look at them. It's way more in depth than what we'll do now. But if I'm looking at this, and this is a hygienist, I'm at 762 so far, and let's just say hypothetically, I've got 3 days left that I'm working in this current month. I know that I need to hit 1048 every single day to get to that threshold and get to my goal. I'm looking at scheduled production for today. I'm seeing 984, which to me means if I'm seeing 8 patients, that if I can do varnish on half of those patients, then I've already hit my goal. Let alone if I can do, irrigation or Reston, or even laser, I know I for sure can hit my goal. If I scroll to the next and I see 630, I go, okay, I need some work to do. How can I turn this 630 into, the 1048 that I need? Now, there could be some people from today's schedule that maybe need scaling route planning or an extra quadrant that I can have come back the next time I'm working, knowing, all right, I'm working on Friday. I've only got 630 on my schedule. There's got to be some gaps in there. Let's look at the schedule on Friday. Oh, looks like I have it 3 o'clock. As a hygienist, if I know that, I can easily present treatment and be like, you know what, I don't have time today because I'm really busy, but on Friday at 3 o'clock, if you want to come in, it'll take 30, 40 minutes. And maybe, that's a quad. And, maybe that's $200 or something, depending on what insurance they have. And that's one way that I would look at this. The second way is, if I see the following working day at 1893, that's obviously well over my goal. Are there any patients that I can get to move up? Maybe say I had a cancellation at 3 on Friday. I know Friday appointments are hot commodities. Can I get maybe Sara to move up? And instead of coming on Monday, she comes in at Friday at 3 and does 2 quads. So that's how you kind of want to look at this. The more that you do it and the more coaching that comes with it. Sara and myself, for people who do have dental basic, we do offer consults, so feel free to reach out to us and we can really get into the weeds on these things and get advanced.
I think one other thing I'll note too is that this provides you and your team with a really good roadmap as to where you guys can focus your efforts. So obviously Xavier touched on what clinicians can do, but to make their day better. But no clinician is an island. It's a team effort. There's assistants, there's front office involved. So this really gives everyone the opportunity to see what they can do to help these clinicians get over the hump and reach their goal for the day, or the clinician can collaborate with the front office team and see what can we move on the schedule to increase some of the production in the next coming working days. Who can we call? What patients have not, scheduled treatment but are on board in terms of what they want to start. So again, this provides your team with a good roadmap, so your efforts are more focused and not just flailing about aimlessly.
Yeah, no, definitely. Again, just for the sake of time, we'll move forward, but I did want to just go over for 5 minutes our dashboard. Again, I'm assuming most of you guys have something similar, or you're running reports to get some of these numbers to review them in morning huddles. But that's just a little insight on kind of how we look at it. So let me go back here. Okay, so a couple more slides left. How to incentivize your team members. This is very, very important, as you guys know. Again, I say this a lot because I do believe it takes a village. You may have the best general dentist or the best hygienist in the world, but that does not automatically transfer to you being profitable, as me and Sara have learned firsthand. If you don't get buy-in from everyone on the team, it's very difficult to be successful and to stay afloat. This industry is very competitive. It's consolidating more and more by the day. And identifying the right team members in the interviewing process is very important. I don't have it on here, but it's very critical. And what I would do is I would meet with every single employee right after they were hired, and I would figure out what their motivation is. Because as an operations manager, it was my job to motivate the team and motivate each individual. And you can't do that unless you know kind of what's in it for them. So some people are motivated by money, and I went into this thinking everyone would say money, but I was shocked and pleasantly surprised, actually, that some people just want recognition, or some people want to feel empowered, or they want to be held accountable for certain things, and they want to be a part of a team. Some people, just praise at a morning huddle gets them, feeling great about where they work at. And you guys are kind of responsible, or the operators are responsible for, creating that workplace and creating that environment that, patients see. And patients can tell the vibe very, very quickly when they walk into an office. They can tell if your employees are disgruntled within 20 seconds of them going back to take an X-ray. And again, if you're not incentivizing, if you're not figuring out what motivates your employees, you're just going to be stuck in the same wheel, and it's going to be difficult. You're going to have turnover. You're going to have patients that write you crazy Yelp reviews at 2 a.m. and say how the staff was, not great and they were rude. So here are a few tidbits. Incentives, again, don't always need to be dollars and cents. Pizza parties, ice cream parties. People love candy, especially in the dental industry for some weird reason. Gift cards. It could be a lot of different things. Take them out
a Friday off.
Yeah, give them a day off, or let them leave early on a Friday, or take them out to drinks for a happy hour after a rough day. All these things to show your appreciation towards your team are extremely important. Make goals clear, challenging, yet attainable. You want goals to be difficult to hit, but you don't want them to be impossible, because when they're impossible, then people will just think there's no reason there even is a goal. I'm never going to hit it, so this doesn't even pertain to me. And then ensure the reward is tied to overall team success, so you can build team camaraderie. And then Sara, you probably have a few things you want to say with regards to that.
Yeah, I think obviously these huddles and these incentives, motivations really set the right tone in your office. And again, that leads to great employee and team experience, great patient experience, and hopefully eventually that leads to patient retention, which in turn then leads to profitability, right? So also when you are talking about incentivizing your team members, also encourage some healthy competition. Definitely keep it friendly, but encourage some competition amongst peer groups. So I found that when I did this, a little bit of encouragement of, kind of prodding of some competition actually led to some collaboration amongst my clinicians who wanted to attain some of the results that their peers were having. They'd ask each other for tips and tricks on dentistry, how to run their schedule smoothly, and they'd even have some chats about chairside manner and how to better connect with patients. And hopefully this goes without saying, but celebrate successes and wins. I mean, human nature is the desire to do well and succeed, right? So make sure to acknowledge and celebrate successes, improve results, and I mean, even consider, again, that whole public praise piece is really motivating. So consider acknowledging some efforts worthy of recognition, but maybe the goal wasn't quite reached, because this could be just the right positive reinforcement that that individual needs to help them reach their goal for the following month.
Yeah, and to add to that too, milestones are very important. If, you know, your provider attains, you know, $3,000 a day for a month the first time, that should be celebrated. That's really great stuff, and it's very difficult to do that. So that, and then from a team standpoint, if you produce $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 in a month, you guys should celebrate that stuff, because it's really important, and your team appreciates it more than you know. I promise you that.
Very energizing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, how to balance production versus patient care. So some of this stuff we kind of talked about earlier, but to kind of tie it all in, how do you get your team to buy in? So if you never set goals, if you've never had a budget, if there's no incentive that you've ever given to any team members, then how do you get them to buy in? And if you want to implement goals for the first time, the one thing I always say in a conversation is, remember, a goal is not a quota. So a quota, quota dentistry is sometimes heard in this industry, and it's actually usually patients that say it, because they just think that all dentists have a quota somehow. I don't know where they get that from, but use car salesman. But a quota is something to where you could actually lose your job if you aren't hitting a quota. A goal is completely different. You're not going to fire someone for not hitting their goal. A goal is something that collectively an individual and a team can aspire to work harder to obtain and to reach. So another thing that you can say is, if you're in this industry to help people, which most dental assistants and front desk staff and clinicians hopefully are in this industry for, what's wrong with setting goals to make sure that you treat as many patients as possible? And if you put it that way, I mean, at the end of the day, as operators and as executives, we understand that the lights need to be turned on and need to be kept on, right? So we need to make money to do these things and to grow. But from a employee standpoint, if you keep it in the same frame as, hey, we're going to help 10 patients today and change their life and do things for them to better their oral hygiene, that's a different subject, and that's a different way that I would recommend to try to have some of those conversations for any of you that are having problems, kind of teaching old dogs new tricks in this. And then also, what sets your practice apart from others? So are you guys the office that has same-day crowns? Are you the office that's open on Saturdays or Sundays, or work hours, so before 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m.? Are you the office of yes, we always squeeze patients in? Are you the office that no matter what, patients never have to wait? Find out what sets your practice apart and build off of that, and cherish that, really, because if you can be different than the other 7 dental offices that you pass on the way to work every single day, and you guys in the community are perceived in that way, then that's something also to celebrate. And you have to make sure that you continue to focus on that, and the rest of it will follow. Sarah, do you want to jump in?
Well, yeah, and it doesn't have to be, some magic. It doesn't necessarily have to be Saturdays if that's not feasible for you or group. Sometimes it can just be the people who work in the practice and who are committed to the patients and committed to creating a really positive experience. they're the people that can make the difference. You know, there's a dental office on every corner these days. So the market is obviously clearly saturated, but you know, people make all the difference for patients. So encouraging your team to connect with patients. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the clinician who's connecting, the front office team, the back office assistant, whomever. They can build really strong connections, and that can be the reason the patient returns to your practice. So just with new patients, they're important, obviously, but recall patients can be more impactful. So as we previously mentioned, patients who already have that established trust and relationship with their clinicians are more likely to move forward with treatment. So again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but building that trust is key to increasing case acceptance, which thereby increases production and therefore, again, leading to higher profit margins. New patients, of course, are always going to be a critical part of your business. It's important to maintain growth in that metric. However, recall patients are the ones that are going to help you sustain your long-term growth. So focusing on year-over-year growth in recall patient numbers is super important. To attain this growth, again, it's critical to create a great experience for both subgroups of patients, or it will amount to wasted efforts and not aggregate growth. It's important to wow them at their first appointment and try to convert them into a recall patient. Otherwise, you and your team are basically spinning your wheels for every new patient appointment. But also, don't take your recall patients for granted. Continue to wow them, continue to create that red carpet experience for them as well, and remind them why they chose you guys instead of the 10 other offices they can probably see from the parking lot. So with regards to patient experience, you know, continue to measure your new patient and recall growth numbers, but make sure to establish some KPIs to measure patient experience to keep your team, you know, really laser focused on being patient-centric and providing that great experience. So Xavier touched on it. Some ideas are Yelp, Google scores, but obviously we know that sometimes those reviews can be a little bit challenging and sometimes tricky, sometimes really good, but sometimes tricky. So also implementing some internal measurements such as post-visit surveys, word of mouth referral programs, etc. That can really help shed some light on how your team is doing with wowing your patients. I just said wow a lot.
Wow.
Wow. Hopefully that's some wowing information.
Yeah. Okay, so Sarah, do you want to go over just really quick the CE again? So hopefully you guys enjoyed what we discussed, and Sarah will go over this CE verification information one last time, and then we'll get into questions here, and hopefully we can answer as many as possible. If not, again, we will make sure that we answer your guys' questions. We'll reach out to you guys directly at some point in the next day or two.
So you'll be receiving an email from CE Zoom in approximately 72 hours that will have instructions on how to retrieve your CE units. And don't worry if you're not writing all of this down that you see on your screen. You're going to receive an email from us that basically has the exact same information. So your questions will be answered. And we really hope you guys enjoyed our presentation and that you're able to take away some strategies and ideas that will help your practices. And again, if we don't get to your questions right away, we will get back to you as soon as possible, either Xavier or myself or both of us.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to look at some of these questions here. Let's see. So one of the questions is, what do you mean by opportunity for providers to make more money? So opportunities are really appointments. So every patient that walks into your practice is an opportunity the way that I see it. And the way that you want to maximize opportunity is really making sure that there's enough time on the schedule to do same-day treatment. If you guys have never done same-day treatment, it is a process to change that habit. But really, if you have patients that are coming in that you know have pending treatment and it's not scheduled, it's a really good time in a morning huddle to identify, hey, Chris hasn't been here in a year and we still have 2 crowns left to do. I know he's just coming in for his exam and cleaning, but can we reach out to Chris before the day starts and say, hey, Dr. Xavier mentioned that you hadn't been in a year. We'd like to take some x-rays and see if you wanted to address those 2 crowns before they turn into root canals and extractions. So really think of a patient visit as an opportunity in a certain way. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's also an opportunity, for that day, but also an opportunity to build a patient relationship. So if it's a new patient, it's an opportunity to, again, wow them, and really create a great experience and hopefully create a recall patient from them. But also they have family, they have friends, they have coworkers, their family and friends probably have teeth, hopefully, and also children and friends that they can also refer to your practice. So everyone walking into your door really is an opportunity for the dentistry and the care that you can provide that day, but also going forward and how that, that one seed, that one patient can branch out into eventual growth. And again, we're talking about profitability here. So that growth is key to sustaining and maintaining growth.
Another question we got was, my office posts exams and x-rays to the doctors. Is your percentage based on hygienists getting x-rays, fluoride, et cetera, towards their production? So this percentage does not include x-rays or exams. So what we did is we had x-rays all go to a house doctor, and then the exams all went to the treating dentist, and hygiene was only responsible for the production that they did themselves as far as cleanings, perio maintenance, scaling and root planing, any adjunctive therapy, fluoride especially, and it does not include x-rays, to answer the question. Another question we have is, how do we coach a new grad who might be struggling out the gate? So this is a tricky one, and it takes time to coach a new grad. Again, we discussed it earlier, how important it is to set them up for success. And it's not just making sure that they see enough patients or they don't see too many patients or their goals not attainable. It's probably 80% the coaching that comes with thinking of a new grad who's never presented a case before that has any financial meaning. So what I like to do is try to cut down their exam time as quickly as you can. What new grads like to do is kind of ramble on, and they think they need to say every single thing that's diagnosed and why, and they could be talking about 13 teeth in a new patient exam. I can tell you right now, it's not going to work. They have to identify what they want to start with, and that exam should be only what they want to start with. Rely on the staff and the treatment coordinators to provide information on what the patient needs in its entirety, as far as all quadrants. But what I recommend is, get that exam to under 10 minutes is a good threshold. And if you can do that, the patient will probably only have maybe 3 to 4 teeth that they're fixated on during the exam, and it'll make it more comprehensible to the patient, because as we know, attention spans aren't super long these days.
That's not overwhelming.
Yeah, so you don't want to overwhelm them. And I actually used to stand outside of operatory rooms with a stopwatch, and the new grad would know that I was, timing their exam. And the first one that I ever did was literally like 26 minutes. And I was like, I basically said, okay, if they're talking to you for 26 minutes, they've probably been here already for an hour and a half. So there's no way that they're going to do any procedures today.
What point do you think the patient stopped listening? Like
No,
4 minutes?
2 minutes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that's number one thing. Make sure that their exams are short and to the point, and let the financial coordinator handle all the financial questions. Don't have them sitting in a room going, oh, well, I think a crown is with your insurance $700. That should never, ever happen. Have them diagnose, say Xavier or Sara will be in 2 minutes to go over how much it costs, and then they're on to their next visit. So good question there.
I think also just to add to that, from an operator standpoint, you know, we're not clinicians. We can't do dentistry. We don't know what it's like to start drilling into a tooth and the pressure and the time that you feel, you know, on your back. So it's not our place to really tell a clinician how to do the actual dentistry and how fast they should be. But there's definitely coaching opportunities with any type of mentor dentist or owner doctor that might be working in the practice as well. And from an operator, again, you can just more coach the dentist on, again, their case acceptance, the connection that they're making with the patient, how, as Xavier mentioned, how they are explaining the treatment that's needed, and just, I guess, to put it simply, just the more warm and fuzzy piece of it and how they can provide that great experience. But just be cautious of any type of clinical coaching because, again, that should be left up to a fellow clinician for sure.
Perfect. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it for questions.
I think that was it for questions. Thank you guys again for attending. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out directly to me or Sara, and we'd be happy to help and answer any questions. If you would like the slides as well, you can reach out. My email address is xgardner@planetdds.com, and Sara's is Ettinger@planetdds.com. Ettinger.
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. And cheers.
Thanks, everyone.